Shalom, this is Rob Van Hoff. Welcome to Ancient Manuscripts for Parashat Balak. Parashat Balak. And that is Numbers 22 through 25, roughly. And it's the story of Balaam. Balaam, if you remember, Balaam, also in Hebrew it's Bilam. Bilam. And he is a prophet that is hired by Balak to curse Israel. And we have this fragment here that you see on the screen. This is from Cave 2 at Qumran. And what that means is, means it was the second cave found. This is a limestone cave. It is not easy to get to. It's not a cave that people would hang out in or even stay the night in or anything like that. It was a cave just to stash some scrolls. So it's a natural limestone cave, a distance from the settlement, as opposed to like Cave 4, which is a man-made cave that is real close to the settlement. That was like an active library. So this is a more longer-term storage found in 1952. That's when they found cave number 2. And this tiny fragment here is all that survives that scholars have identified from the book of Numbers. And you might wonder, you see this tiny little bit of text here, how would we ever know that this is from the book of Numbers? It's hard to know, right? Unless you know Hebrew, there's not much on here, just some little scratches. And of course, we've got it zoomed in here. Well, what I wanted to show you is this section right here. If we look at that, you'll see that this is from the book of Numbers, and it's Numbers 23:7. And in Numbers 23:7, it says, he took up his discourse and said, this is describing Balaam, from Aram Balak has brought me, Moab's king from the mountains of the east. Come, curse Jacob for me, and come, denounce Israel. So that's this verse. Well, how do we know that that's what this is? Well, if we look closely at the Hebrew here, we see a yod. This is a yod, a nun, a chet, a nun, and a yod. Now, of course, I'm simplifying the writing to a block script. It's really more, right, the yods at the beginning and the end look like that, 2 nuns like that, with a chet in the middle. And so that, with this next word, which is bet, you see here we've got a bet, a lamed, and then that. And we also have what looks to be a mem sophit over here, the end of a mem. Well, there's only one place in Scripture that fits that place, and that's this passage, Numbers 23:7. And if I were to write the rest of the bit here, it says min Aram, so this would be Aleph, Resh, Mem, and then Yod, Nun, Chet, Nun, Yod, and then Bet, Lamed, and then this would be a Kuf. And there's also a min here. From Aram, Balak led me. From Aram, Balak led me. So Balak was the king who hired Balaam. And it's only in Numbers 23:7 where this could work. Numbers 23:7. So it's amazing how just a tiny fragment like this can still be identified. Now, again, this is the only fragment from the book of Numbers identified from Cave 2. And we can also zoom in on this upper part here. And because we know it's if we assume now, moving forward, that this is certainly this passage from Numbers 23, we can kind of reverse engineer and figure out what this is up above, which is really crazy. But we can say this is probably looks like a resh. This looks like a dalet. This could be the bottom of a bet. And this could be the bottom of a tav. And certainly what we find out then is that the end of the prior verse, well, not the exact prior verse, but verse 5, it says the word, it says Adonai put a word in Balaam's mouth and said, return to Balak and veho tedaber, and such you shall say. Well, it fits, tedaber fits perfectly here. Tedaber, tav, dalet, beit, resh, like here. Tedaber, ko tedaber is what it is. And so, such you shall speak. So this, while it's missing here, this tiny little bit here looks like the end of Numbers 23, verse 5. And so all the evidence that we can see points out that this is very likely a scroll that has the first verses of Numbers 23 written on them. Now the question is, was this a whole scroll of Numbers? Was this an entire scroll of the Torah? We don't know for sure. But we know from just this fragment that, and it fits with the text that we have from the Masoretic tradition, that this best explanation for this fragment is that it's Numbers 23, a little bit from verse 5 and a little bit from verse 7. And there's no other good explanation for what this is. So scholars say this is Numbers 23:7, and again, it's from Cave 2 at Qumran, dating, it's 2,000 years old. It's a 2,000-year-old fragment. Anyway, this was just a quick little note for this week's Torah portion in terms of ancient manuscripts that show how a tiny little piece of fragment of, basically, I mean, this is a piece of dried leather, right? It's just a tiny bit of leather with some ink on it, and it is, the real size is going to be really tiny, really tiny. So today, with high-res microscopes and cameras, we can take a real quality picture, something that we could zoom in on, and we can investigate it so carefully. But if someone said to you, hey, I want you to find a piece of leather, write something on it in ink that'll still be legible 2,000 years from now. Like how do you make ink that'll last? How do you prepare a surface? All these things. What they did not have was a technology to keep a scroll in its entirety preserved for 2,000 years. They weren't thinking that far ahead, right? Because scrolls would fade away and they'd need to rewrite a new scroll you'd have to keep rewriting and creating new ones because there was no way to, like we have now in museums, you can put it in a controlled environment where you can control temperature and humidity. You can make things airtight. You can press it in glass and all these things that really, really extend how long it'll last. Back then, they don't have that technology. But the ink they used and the surface they prepared was able to stand this test of time. But the deterioration of the manuscripts as a whole was the big problem. I hope this was informative for y'all. Hi, Patrick. Hi, Terry. Shalom, brothers. Hope you guys have a great day.